So, ladies and gentlemen, we have a tradition at the Religious Freedom Project where we try to be on time, and we try to begin and end on time. Usually we are pretty close to that. Unfortunately, our moderator is in a cab on the way here from Union Station, and it's impossible to predict what she will encounter. So rather than wait and have the uncertainty, we're going to go ahead and begin. Eliza Griswold is the moderator. So when she comes in, we have students who will bring her up. And my colleague Kent Hill, who will be on a later panel, is sitting to my left and is going to kick us off. So it'll be a little awkward when we make that exchange, but I think it will be worth doing so we can go ahead and get started on this terribly, terribly important panel. So Kent, take it away.
Thanks. Thank you, Tom, and thank you for coming back. And we're looking forward to this next panel. This next panel addresses advocacy and civil society perspectives on the big issue of the day, the threats to religious and ethnic minorities within the Islamic State. I'm just going to be up here for a few minutes. I have the privilege of introducing our four panelists. And what I'm going to do, and I'm going to turn to each of them in turn. They're going to have about 5 minutes or so to give their name, their organization, and to say just a little bit about how they and their organization are trying to address this question in general terms. And so first I'm going to turn to Murad Ismail, and he's going to introduce himself, and then we will go on from there.
Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Murad Ismail. I'm the Executive Director of YASDA organization. Is it working now? Is it working? I think the issue is not there.
Yeah, it's working now.
So,
why don't you take mine here? Mine's working.
yeah. It's working now. I think it doesn't work all the time.
It is.
Sorry about this. Excuse me.
We just go to mine, and then maybe we'll get you wired to the back.
Yeah. Well, wait a second. Try this. That's better.
It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Murad Ismail. I'm the Executive Director of YASDA organization. It's a global Yazidi organization that was established after August 3rd, 2014, when the Islamic State attacked our community in Shingal. I work with this group to create YASDA and to provide different humanitarian services to the Yazidi community, including 2 clinics, 1 psychosocial program for the women, a case management program, a documentation program, in addition to our work that we do internationally advocating for the Yazidi cause.
Okay. Mona.
Is mine working? Yes? Can you hear me? No.
Use the
Okay.
mic.
All right. My name is Mona Malik, and I'm with the Assyrian Aid Society of America. And I was born in Baghdad. I left when I was very young. I have visited Iraq a couple of times, and I plan to be there again very shortly. The reason I am up here today is because I am representing someone who wasn't allowed to leave the country to be here. Ashar Kharia, the president of the Assyrian Aid Society of Iraq. So if you see me reading most of my answers, it's because I want them to be his answers, and I am his voice. And the Assyrian Aid Society of Iraq's voice, because just as Bishop Royale said, is we, as Assyrians of diaspora, have no right and are not in any position to dictate to the Assyrians living in the homeland as to what they should be doing or not doing. We are here to serve them, and that's why I'm here speaking for them in his words, in his answers. And how we have tried to work with this crisis is on a humanitarian perspective when Assyrian Aid Society's focus has always been education and infrastructure. Well, that focus has been shifted for the last 2 years because that funding has to go toward helping the IDPs and refugees. And we are hoping that we return back to our focus of education and infrastructure once again to help our Assyrian Christians in the homeland.
Thanks, Mona. And Rajab?
I think it's working.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, good morning all. I am Ali Zain al-Abidin al-Bayati. I'm actually a neurologist and chief of Turkmenisk Foundation. It is an NGO, Iraq-based NGO. We're working.
Can you speak slower because we're not.
Yeah, sorry.
You're talking too fast for us.
Yeah. I am Ali Zain al-Abidin al-Bayati. Actually, I am neurologist doctor, chief of Turkmenisk Foundation, which is an Iraq-based NGO, working with a group of volunteers in Iraq, and we have many representatives outside of Iraq, including America, UK, and other countries. We are trying to increase awareness about the suffering of Turkmen in Iraq, and even outside of Iraq, according to our facility. We are working mainly in documentation and reporting, in media work, depending on our simple facilities. We have a web-based Turkmen news agency. We are depending on social media and attending conferences and international sessions to increase the awareness of suffering of our people, because the suffering of Turkmen return back to many decades, and it is not new things, return to 30s of the century. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
أنا رجب عاصي كاكاي بين قوسين اليارسانية.
I'm Rajab Asi الكركجي.
كاكاي.
الكاكاي.
سنة 2003 أسسنا جمعية يارسان الثقافية والاجتماعية التي تعني بالثقافة الكاكائية. ومن سنة 2005 إلى 2009 كنت رئيس مركز كركوك لها، وبعدها صرت مستشار في نفس الجمعية، وكذلك أنا الآن أعمل على منظمة أخرى تعني بالثقافة والتنمية اليارسانية.
أنا أعمل في مؤسسة لنشر الثقافة الكاكائية وأصبح I'm sorry.
شانسة.
I'm working.
شانسة. أمير وينين
Yeah, we're working in an organization spreading the Kakai culture, and I've been head of this organization since من سنة كام؟
2003.
Since the year 2003.
2003 إلى 2005. من 2005 كنت مسؤول مركز كركوك لنفس الجمعية.
As of 2005, I've been the official in charge of the Kirkuk Center for this organization.
وبعدها أصبحت مستشار العلاقات والإعلام لنفس الجمعية.
Then I became a consultant for information and media for the same organization.
وحاليا أنا الشخص الثالث من تمثيل الكاكية في وزارة الأوقاف والشؤون الدينية في إقليم كردستان.
And currently I'm number 3 in the representatives of the Kakai community in the Ministry of Kurdistan.
Yes. وكذلك أعمل الآن على تأسيس منظمة ميترا للتنمية والثقافة اليارسانية.
And now I'm also establishing an organization called the Mitra for development and culture in my community, in the Kakai community.
وكذلك أنا عضو ديوان التنوع العراقي في مجلس حوار الأديان.
I'm also a member of the Council of Diversity in the Iraqi Council
وممثل الكاكية فيها.
For religious dialogue, and I'm also the representative of the Kakai movement in this council.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm going to go ahead and take the liberty of asking you one question. I don't have Eliza's questions, so I can ask anything I want. But I know from working in a variety of organizations that anybody who's involved in advocacy or civil society, the temptation is to believe that that kind of activity doesn't have much impact once you've come to a situation where violence is occurring. If one of the actors is, in this case, attacking religious or ethnic minorities. So my question for any of you is this question. In a situation like this, who is the focus of your advocacy on? Who are you trying to persuade of what to improve the situation relative to the ethnic and religious minorities in these situations? Anybody want to take a crack at answering that question? Yeah, right.
Mike?
Well, whoever. You can if you wish. You understood what I said there?
نعم نستطيع أن نقول هسه.
واضح عن كاكاي؟
أي الجماعات.
Yeah. You want to say something? Okay. While you talk, I'm going to go ahead and let you speak.
So I think, is this working? Yeah. So in situations like this, I think, in situations like this, when you basically entire communities find themselves without defense in the hands of a group that believes in nothing but the killing, enslavement, rape, a group that basically have no morals of responsibilities. And in the past, we've all seen many wars. All the wars, there is some moral in it. What the so-called Islamic State did had no basis of moral in it. They attacked entire communities with the intentions to wipe them out. And their own community, the fraction of the community that they say that we represent, in any case they didn't agree with them, they came also to persecute them. So we all found ourselves in a situation where we really didn't know what to do. For a small community like my community, the Yazidi community, we found ourselves facing two choices, to convert or to die, and neither of the two choices we like to have. For the women was to be taken and the children to be taken. I think the advocacy that we've done through YASDA was focused on two things, of collecting a lot of information, because once you have the information, then you can use that information to approach the government. For example, the beginning of the attack, we collected information about 6,000 Yazidi women and children as they were taking them, their locations, what was happening. So this information becomes a tool of us to do the advocacy. And then the approach was basically to the governments, and then to a certain extent to the media. If you don't have media with you, then it's very hard to make any advance. I think with any cause like this, you have to have a lot of media coverage. You have to have communication with the governments. But then once you bring also other NGOs, other advocacy groups, then you have more people working with you. In my experience, that we became more active as we had more players coming in and advocating for this cause.
But the point of your advocacy is to get somebody to intervene on behalf of your community.
In behalf of our community, but in behalf of the humanity as a whole. To me, is what the Islamic State is doing is beyond anything that we ever seen. And when we advocate for our community, I think we advocate on behalf of all the communities.
Okay, good. Mona?
Yeah, I would just also like to add to my colleague from YASDA, is that not only were we not prepared to defend ourselves, but we were disarmed prior to ISIS coming in, and we weren't allowed to be part of the security. So we had no way of defending ourselves. So when we had a few hours just to escape from Mosul, Baghdad, Qarakar, and all those areas, they literally left with the clothes on their back. And when they say that, it's not just words, it's actually reality. So who we go to bring awareness is the international community, like my colleague said, the UN, who has still not recognized the genocide of the minorities, and they must do that to bring justice to the victims of genocide of ISIS. So yeah, international community, the UN, the US, as much as possible, and also within our own communities to rise up. I mean, this is a crime against all humanity, not just against the minorities.
Yeah, I think it's working. Thank you. Good morning again for all. If I answer on question of my colleague about focus of our work, I think it is our duty to work for all humanity and all human beings. Yeah, we are specialized, each one of us in certain minority issue, This is because, unfortunately, the new democracy in Iraq forced us to think about our religion, to think about ethnicity, and to think more about our own sectarian. So the democracy in Iraq, unfortunately, started in dividing everything in Baghdad according to Shia, Sunni, Kurds. Then all others minority have been marginalized, and this forced us to think more about that. This is what happened in Iraq. So I am a Turkmen, and I am working for Turkmen because there is a need, a necessity in the ground about that. But I am at the same time working for all people. As a doctor, it is my duty to work for all humanity and all human beings. So as a Turkmen, I think there is another thing that Turkmen always forgotten. I think most of you not know about Turkmen. Turkmen is the third ethnicity in Iraq, and we are representing about 7 to 10% of Iraqi population according to all the census data. 7 to 10% of Iraqi population. We are extending from northwest of Iraq at the Iraqi, Turkish, Syrian border till mid-eastern Iraqi border or Iraqi-Iranian border. As an NGO, we are working as a group of activists, as a volunteers, to make the others know the realities, because the main problem of minorities in Iraq that the facts is hidden. No one knows the facts. I think what happened in ISIS is not new. It belonged back to many decades. But the media started to convey some things. And this is what we need. Actually, we need the most important thing here is to make something or establish something to make the reality reach all the international community. All the international community, as they started and participated in establishing new democracy in Iraq at 2003, they are also have another duty to reevaluate what happened in Iraq. We have thousands of Yazidi have been abducted and raped and killed. Hundreds of women have been raped and killed by burning, and thousands have been killed over these years. So USA, we thank the USA government about this opportunity, about these activities, but at the same time we ask them to reevaluate what happened on these 13 years and what happened on the minorities. I think our suffering is too much. The most important issue as a Turkmen, I want to talk about the issue of abducted Turkmen women. We have, according to our report, which reported and published since 1 year, we have about 1,200 Turkmen civilians have been abducted by ISIS, 600 of them women and girls, 120 children. The women, the strange thing, which is different from Yazidi, that the ISIS, after raping, they killed them by beheading, by burning them. And there was an entity at Bashir, at west of Kirkuk, Bashir village, which is Turkmen village. They raped about 9 Turkmen girls and they burned them, and they used even to hang them on the electricity lines. At Tel Afar, the first woman had been killed was parliamentarian, and she was activist, and she was our colleague. She was head of an organization. They abducted her with her husband, and then they killed her by beheading. So this is what happened. Another thing what I want to talk also, which is important thing, and the international community didn't do anything for us. In March 2016, ISIS attacked Taza district in the west of Kirkuk, and the attack was with chemical weapons. Until today, we have about 6,000 victims, including all degree of affected person. I am talking about burning condition, about chest problems, lung problems. And as a doctor, I know that most of them for the future, because they used chemical weapon, they are prone to develop long-term carcinoma, long-term lung fibrosis. Who's responsible? Who will protect them? We know that the facilities in Iraq is very poor. So we need actual steps and action about that.
Okay, thank you so much. We will get to each of your points, and we will get to them in detail, because I think the point of today is really to understand what's not being reported, why are we not hearing about what's happening to minorities under ISIS, and what do some of the solutions look like. So thank you so much, and we'll break that down a little bit so people can follow along. So
No, 6,000 injured or affected. 3 killed, yeah.
In Tel Afar? Under
No,
this
in
chemical?
Taza Hormata after chemical attack.
Okay, in the chemical attack.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Total number of victims, I mean simple degree burn or chest problem till severe degree, or some of them have been killed. Yeah, yeah.
And see, that's why this is so essential, because
Yeah.
that has gone virtually unreported. Okay. So sir, I want to give you a chance to finish the question.
Thank you. أنا أنتهز الفرصة للتعريف الكاكائية. الاسم يجوز السيد أرشد والنواب القادمون من العراق يعرفونه، ولكن المجتمع الغربي لا يعرفون من هم الكاكائية. لذا أقل من دقيقة للتعريف عن الكاكائية فقط.
A minute to explain about the Kakai community, because people here who are from Iraq all know about the Kakai community, but others will not know. So if you give me a minute, I will explain what's happening. Who are we?
الاسم الأصلي للكاكائية هو يارسان، وهي ديانة مستقلة.
Yarsan is the real name of the Kakai, and it is an independent religion.
تعود جذورها للديانة الميثرائية قبل آلاف السنين قبل
Derived
الميلاد.
from the Mithraean religion that goes back thousands of years.
يتوزعون اليارسان في العراق وفي إيران، وفي إيران يسمونهم بأهل الحق، والعراق يسمونهم الكاكائية.
They live in Iraq and Iran. In Iran, they are known as the people of the truth, and in Iraq, they are known as the Kakais.
ويعيش في العراق حوالي 200,000 إلى 250,000. ليس لدينا إحصائيات دقيقة لعدم وجود إحصائيات في العراق، والنواب سيد النواب يعرفون ذلك.
In Iraq, there are between 200,000 Kakais and 200,050. We cannot be completely sure of the numbers, because there have been no proper statistics about the numbers of the community.
واليوم أنا كمواطن عراقي يتحدث عن الكاكائية اليارسان في العراق.
And today I'm here as an Iraqi citizen who are talking about the Kakai communities or the Yarsans in Iraq.
من المعلومة الكاكائية هم من الناحية القومية أكراد، ومن الناحية الدينية ليسوا مسلمين.
Can you say this again?
من المعلوم الكاكائية اليارسان كقومية نرجع أكراد، ونصوصنا الدينية مكتوبة بالكردية.
Ethnically, we are Kurdish, and our religious texts are written in the Kurdish language.
وديننا ليس مسلم.
Our religion is
أقلية
not
دينية.
Islam. We are a religious minority.
أتحدث عن فترة وجود داعش، حيث احتل داعش 7 قرى من الكاكائية في سهل نينوى وفي جنوب كركوك.
ISIS occupied 7 villages belonging to the Kakais in the valleys of Nineveh and near Kirkuk.
ويبلغ عدد العوائل النازحين 2178 عائلة، تساوي 19,233 شخص.
The number of people displaced are 2,178 families, equal to 19,000 people and 233.
تعرض قرانا لاحتلال داعش، ولكن لحسن الحظ، أنا أقول لحسن الحظ، كون الناس هناك من الكاكائية كانوا لهم حس مبكر بأن قدوم داعش للمنطقة، فهربوا قبل وصول داعش.
The Kakais, although their villages were occupied, they had a premonition that the ISIS was on its way. So fortunately, they fled from the region before they came.
داعش هدم 5 مزارات دينية لنا. فجرها.
ISIS blew up 5 of our temples.
داعش هدم العديد من البيوت وفخخ البيوت المتبقية.
They demolished many houses, and they booby-trapped the rest of the houses.
بعد تحريرها من قبل قوات البيشمركة وبقيادة قوات التحالف.
After this area was liberated by the Peshmergas, which are the Kurdish forces, and the coalition forces.
عاد الناس إلى قراهم المحررة لكي يروا منازلهم.
People came back to their liberated villages to take a look at their houses.
بسبب الدور المفخخة استشهد 9 أشخاص.
And because of the booby traps, 9 people were martyred.
وكانت الخسارة المادية أيضا تقدر أكثر من 52 مليون.
And the material damage was assessed at about 52 million.
واليوم أنا هنا أركز في حديثي على آثار النفسية على الفرد الكاكي اليارساني الذي يعيش في العراق.
And I want to speak to you today about the psychological effect on the Yasani people who are still living in Iraq.
بسبب الخوف من داعش ذهب عديد من الأشخاص من الكاكية في لقاء تلفزيوني وصرحوا بأنهم مسلمين.
Because of fear of ISIS, several of the KAKAI community members appeared on television and said that they were Muslims.
ولدي الكلام بعد هذه الكلام أيضا أود أن يشاركني الزملاء في كلامهم لا أود أن أخذ كثير من الوقت.
I have more stuff to say, but I would like to leave the opportunity for my colleagues here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So now we have a sense, we have so many representatives. We have a Yazidi community, we have this Syrian community, Turkmen, KAKAI. That is pretty rare in itself, that we are all able to sit together and understand who are these minority groups, what have they faced at the hands of ISIS. So now that we have a general understanding of those basic principles, we have such short time today. I would love to give each of you the chance to talk about what isn't being reported that your community has endured. What has your community's response been? You know, we have several, flight, certainly we have millions of people fleeing the areas. We have the response to trying to leave the country or not. Do people want to go home? Do they want to stay put? What is the desired response post-ISIS? And we have the idea of self-protection. Has your community formed a militia of some kind? Would they like to be recognized by the Iraqi government? Would you like the right to self-empowerment, self-protection? So, civil questions, militia questions, questions about flight and exodus. So let's start out with, when you hear the stories about what ISIS is doing around the world and you think of what's happened in your own community, let me ask each of you, what are you not hearing? I mean, I think of the Turkmen chemical attack. I think of the KAKAI in general we're not hearing about. When you think of the Yazidi community, what do you wish the people in this room knew about that you're not hearing?
You know, I think I wish that everyone would know that the Yazidis are going through a Holocaust. And it's fair to say that there's no gas chambers to kill people and burn people, but there's a system that persecute the Yazidis, not just by Daesh, but also in the past. For me, being an engineer, going to the University of Mosul, I was summoned many mornings to go and to explain who I was, to explain that Yazidis were not devil worshippers, that Yazidis were not dirty, that Yazidis were other human beings. That created a situation where a genocide took place. I always say that a genocide will not take place unless it comes under many shadows, and unless there is a general understanding within that region or that communities that these people do not deserve life. I think until now, the Yazidi tragedy have not been acknowledged to the extent it is. When you have a distinctive religious minority who've been given two choices that nobody else in the region was given our choices, because they say that Yazidis were not people of the book, that Yazidis were devil worshippers, that according to ISIS interpretation, that Yazidis' existence within the Muslim world was shame on them. I think the extent of these tragedies with the women, every single woman I've seen, the many women that I was with over the phone as ISIS was taking them, in some cases in Tal Afar, in one case, they had 3,000 women, 3,200, about 3,200 women, children in 3 villages in Tal Afar. And they keep those villages detention centers, but not just detention. The fighters would come, they will go through those houses, they will pick whatever woman they wanted to pick up. I will never forget those moments, being on the phone with women as the 2 Yazidi women, they committed suicide in Bahaj. 2 others were shot by Daesh. I will never forget looking just 2 weeks ago in the eyes of 5 Yazidi women who lost their husbands. In that same house, 2 medical school students, who were the best in the province of Mosul. The first day, they were put aside, they were killed, their women were taken, everybody in the family was whether enslaved or killed. To see those women, 5 women, with their children at no older than 5 years old, living under horrible conditions in the refugee camps. They have no income, no food, talking about the shelter, about 80%, 85% of the Yazidi population, about 400,000 people have no place to live. For 2 years now, they have no income. For 2 years now, the humanitarian aid have been decreasing every day. Many of them haven't even received dry food for the past 6 months.
This is so essential. This is the next phase of the story that I feel we're not hearing. And Mona, I wonder what you think. The casualty rate due to ISIS and minorities remains an open question. We cannot establish it definitively now. But we certainly do know that by 2016, 3.3 million people had been displaced by ISIS. So for the Assyrian community, driven from their homes, what does living far from home mean? What are you not hearing about this next phase of the story?
Oh, it is working now. Okay. Thank you. I just want to say that one of the things that we need to make clear is that this ethnic cleansing has not just started 2 years ago. It's been slowly happening, and ISIS just expressed the process, okay, just made it happen quicker in a shorter period of time.
Could I interrupt for just 1 second?
Yeah.
Because I think that's so essential, and it's tricky politically to look at that, because when you look particularly at the Syrian Christian community, the Christian community in Iraq in general, you're looking at, before the US invasion, a population of more than 1 million, and the mass exodus happening before ISIS, right? And now we're looking at a community of what, maybe 300,000, several hundred thousand,
maybe, if we're lucky,
right?
Yes. Yes, I mean, the census hasn't been done, but maybe. So it was 1.5 million in 2003, and maybe it's somewhere between 200 and 250 right now. We're not really sure, right? So yeah, so this has been happening for a while. And one of the things that I like for people to know is there are different reactions. Everybody has opinions here. Well, they should get out, or they shouldn't, or they should stay and keep the culture going. That's not our place. But the kinds of stories that come out of there resonate, the feeling. And I just want to quote, some of these women, and I'm quoting because Asher is saying he has, interviewed some of these people, okay? Like one woman who was being moved from one place to another, after losing their homes. If you move my family, you have to move me with all my neighbors, because that's how Assyrian Christians are. The whole neighborhood or the whole village is their family. So that's one thing. I mean, just where and how they're coping with this is. When they have escaped, they've tried to stay together as much as possible. It gives them some sort of semblance of normality, right? In the middle of this whole awful, ugly crisis. And it's the only way they can cope with the loss of their homes, their families, and everything they know to be like human and genuine, right? It's to stay close together as much as possible. From what I hear, from what Asher is saying, is that we are pleading with the international community to help us not only just stay there and have enough food and water, but to have infrastructure again, to have some sort of a Marshall Plan to create jobs and to help us thrive again in our homeland. And we deserve that. We are one of the indigenous people of the area. And we're not saying that pay attention to us when we say that Yazidis and Assyrian Christians have had a genocide done to them, and please help us. We're not saying that our lives are more valuable than anybody else, but there needs to be a priority when we go from 1.5 million to 250,000, there needs to be a priority to that, right?
Yeah, so maybe what we'll do is come back to this question of what does a landscape post-ISIS look like, and what can the international community do to make it so? And I want to reiterate something that you're saying, Mona, that is so essential because, and I've heard both our Turkmen and KAKAI colleagues say this today, look, we're not sitting up here saying, I'm a Turkmen, I'm a Kakai. This is our communal identity. We have been fractured as a people. So it's really important. It's not just us, it's we are the minorities together. I think that's really important what you're saying to hear. Okay, so in terms of the Turkmen community, this chemical attack has gone virtually unreported here in the United States. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about it and what you would call on the international community to do now.
Yeah, thank you. The chemical attack was at March 2016. Taza Hurmato is a district, Turkmen district, about 20 kilometers at the south or 20 kilometers away from the center of Kirkuk, at the south of Kirkuk. Mostly they are Turkmen, have been attacked from village called Bashir. Bashir is another site of crime and disaster against Turkmen. It was at June 2014 when Daesh attacked and displaced about 12,000 Turkmen, and they abducted, raped about, as I mentioned, 9 women and girls. So it was the site of prisons of ISIS, so they were already attacking the district of Taza every day or every weekly, but the government was silent, and because they are busy with ISIS or so there was no any action to stop that. At March 2016, there was twice attack by ISIS. The aggressive one was about 22 mortar filled with chemical weapon. The total number of affected civilian was about 6,000 as a total number till today, because we know that the act of chemical weapon, some of it will be directly and some will appear after days and months and years. So till today we have around, according to the report of local medical city in Taza Hurmato, we have about 6,000 civilian attacked or injured or affected by this weapon. So, and it was mustard gas, according to the official reports from local official reports and from central, and even by the Organization of Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. They declared it, and there was a conference by Mr. Arshad before 2 months or so. They declared that it was really mustard gas.
Mustard gas.
Yeah, so it was a genocide against Turkmen. But till today, there was no action. Some action have been taken steps by our politician to send some people or affect person to Turkey or Iran or so, but there was no any strategic plan to resolve this or to take care of such peoples.
And Doctor, what would that strategic plan look like? Because maybe that's part of articulating how can we not only lay out the scope of the problem here, but address some of the means by which, what would a response look like?
Yeah, first of all, before 3 days, I heard some news from intelligence officers in Iraq that ISIS want now to attack another Turkmen city, which is called Amirli. Amirli is also in Salahuddin province, and it is about 180 kilometers to north of Baghdad. The problem that ISIS is still present in some areas, few kilometers away from civilian habited places. So the problem that Iraqi government trying to get victory in liberation of some places and letting the other places not liberated. I mean that surrounding of Amirli is still inhabited by ISIS, surrounding of Taza Hurmato is still inhabited by ISIS, and they can attack at any time because every day there is new events or criminal acts around our cities. So first of all, we must prevent, because all the world talking about the ability of ISIS to form chemical weapon and their ownership of such weapon. So I think first of all we should prevent such event may occur at any place in Iraq. They can attack any province, any city. So the first point is to prevent. The second point is to deal with those people in a professional way. I mean, the environment in Taza should be cleaned and should be dealt with a professional way by a professional organization. As I know that in Syria, they sent mobile clinics to deal some places or cities. After that, we need giving care for such peoples. We need to investigate for long-term complication. According to my colleagues in Iraq and medical city, they told me that many of them will develop lung fibrosis and leukemia in the future as a blood cancer. So we need also a medical evacuation for some severe cases. So this is what is related to Taza Hormato and what we need actually in this issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very
And now to our KAKAI colleague. The KAKAI are probably, I don't know if you guys would agree with me up here, but the least heard from, along with the Shabak, who hears about what's happening to the KAKAI. So this is a really good moment to hear historically about what persecution has looked like and what the KAKAI are suffering now.
شكرا ولذلك أنا انتهزت الفرصة أقل من دقيقة عرفت عن الكاكائية.
I just introduced you to what the KAKAI community is about.
الاضطهادات تبدأ من تأسيس الدولة العراقية من العشرينات القرن الماضي.
Since the Iraqi state was formed in the 20s of the last century.
عند تأسيس الدولة العراقية لم يذكر في الدستور العراقي آنذاك من أول دستور لها لم يذكر الديانة الكاكية كديانة موجودة في العراق، الديانة اليارسانية قصدي.
The religion of the KAKAI is the Yarsani religion.
Yes.
Was not mentioned in the Iraqi constitution when the country was first formed.
لذلك كان الاسم غريبا عن الغير المحيطين به.
And that's the reason the name is unknown to people who are not close to the community.
الأقليات في العراق يعرفون بوجود الكاكائية كديانة، ولكن الأكثرية المسلمة يعيشون في مناطق الغير الموجودة بها الكاكائية لا يعلمون من هم الكاكائية.
For example, although many would know that the Kakais exist, for the Muslims who live in areas where Kakais do not live, have no idea what the Kakais feast is all about.
كما تحدث زميلي مراد عن التحدث في أكثر من مكان وفي أكثر من الأشخاص يسألوننا من أنتم، أو الدعايات الموجودة عن الكاكية كانت كثيرة أيضا.
It's similar to what my colleague here, Murad, said about his community and how people are asking him about the background of that community. We also face the same problem and the same question.
الأقاويل الغير المنطقية عن الإيزيديين والكاكية وغيرهم من الغير المسلمة كانت موجودة أينما نذهب يسألون هل أنتم عبدة الشيطان، هم أنتم تطفئون الأنوار في الليالي في ليلة في كل رأس سنة، وكذلك دعايات وأقاويل غير لائقة أن تذكر في هكذا مكان.
Many claims were made about us that we are devil worshippers, that we have to turn off all the lights on the New Year, and such unreasonable things that are said out of ignorance.
كل ذلك بسبب عدم ذكرنا دستوريا في أول دستور للعراق ولحد الآن.
The first Iraqi constitution ignored us and didn't make a mention of us.
لذلك نحن بعد 2003 قام نخبة مثقفة من الكاكائيين والحقوقيين بزيارة البرلمان.
Since the year 2003, a select group of Iraqi legal experts and activists visited the Iraqi parliament.
عملوا جاهدا لكي يذكر في صياغة الدستور في 2005، ولكن كان هناك من يعارضنا، وأيضا بالتعاون مع الأكثرية استطاعوا بعدم ذكر الكاكية في الدستور آنذاك.
And they made a big push for the Kakais to be included in the constitution.
I'm going to stop you there because I think that's part of our next question, which is the solution, right? So at this point, we've heard a little bit about what each community is facing, who they are, what we're not hearing about in the news, which is everything. We've heard about the systematic attempts to destroy different peoples. We've heard about targeted campaigns of massacre, of rape, of kidnap for ransom, and then kidnap for taking children into what Daesh calls the Cubs program, child soldiers. I myself interviewed the mother of a 3-year-old girl who was taken by ISIS and has yet to be returned in the Nineveh plain. So this problem could not be more pressing or multifaceted. Now let's turn to solutions. Let's hear from each of these guys about what has been their community's most effective solution. Is it a civil solution? Is it a military solution in help forming militia? Attached right to that is, has it been more successful to leave the country? What is the reality of flight and displacement? So we will turn to that now. What has each community's response been, and where has it been effective? And what we'll end with is the question of what does a post-ISIS Iraq look like? What can the international community do to safeguard the presence of ancient communities in Iraq? So let's begin with that. I'm going to just turn to you, Murad, and ask, with the Yazidi response, what have you guys found to be effective, if anything, and what are you seeing in terms of self-defense, in terms of civil society? What's working?
So I think if we want to identify the current situation of the Yazidi people right now, so will be displacement, mistrust, not being confident to live in the homeland. If you go and ask a question to the Yazidis, anyone, they will tell you whether there will be international protection, recognition of the genocide globally, and preserve my rights as a community, or the other choice that I will leave. About 70,000 have already exited from the Kurdistan region. And I think if the route to Europe was not blocked, there would have been now maybe 100,000 just left in Iraq from 500,000 people. Talking about the solutions, after now we have the resolution from the UN report that said what happened to the Yazidis specifically was a genocide, was a different treatment.
Can I ask you, is that helpful? Does that have any teeth for you on the ground for the international community to acknowledge the genocide?
Well, I think the international community have been lacking its responsibility. They've been dragging basically their feet not to take the case before the ICC or a tribunal court. We are pursuing a legal case. We've Ms. Amal Clooney is working with us, Mr. Luis Moreno Campos working with YASDA. We are trying to open the case before the International Criminal Court. And I think establishing justice is very important. I think when atrocities on this scale are committed against a community, the first thing you can do for them is bring justice. And I've met many victims. The first thing they will tell you that I want what happened to me to be recognized, even if there is nothing tangible coming out of it. So I think the solutions are on several levels. There are solutions need to be done internationally. Solutions need to be done locally by the governments. Solution needs to be done by the Muslim community internationally. I mean, one thing that I would have expected all the Muslims in the world to come out and say that the enslavement of the Yazidi women was not right, something that I never heard. That I can challenge whoever wants to bring a question, that the Muslim clerks internationally never came out against a genocide, never came out and never said the rape of the Yazidi woman was not in line with the Sharia, for example. I think that's something where the Muslim world, they go into a lot of chaos when anything against their religion is being said internationally. I think what happened under the name of Islam, by the Islamic State, which does not represent Islam, which does not represent any religion, just to be clear that. But the Muslim community should have came out in Iraq. Now, if you talk about the Sunni community in Iraq and Syria, the Sunni community, the tribal leaders there, they could have said no to the rape. They could have said no to the distribution of the Yazidi women. They could have said no to the Yazidi genocide, but they didn't say that. So that's one angle. I think also, for you to ask my community who just processed a genocide to find my own solution, it's unfair. How can a community that basically lost everything they possessed for 3 generations, 4 generations, the best Yazidi person left his home with his clothes on? That's the best situation. If you were very lucky, if you were a very happy person, and you would be able to just escape with your own clothes. So for the international community to ask me for a solution is not fair. I think the international community should stand up for its obligations. There must be clear recognition of the genocide with every parliament, with the public. The public should know that Yazidis were being subject to genocide. I think a legal case must be pursued against Daesh, and there must be 2 legal systems, an international legal system through the ICC or a tribunal court, and also a parallel system within Iraq. From my experience and from all of our experience back in 2006 and 2007, when Al-Qaeda and other terrorist groups were able to commit their crimes, but at the same time they were able to integrate back to the political process in Iraq, this is something that my community will never accept. For anyone to bring reconciliation, I would tell them bring the justice word first before you ask for reconciliation. It is very painful to me when I sit with someone while I still have 3,200 women and girls in captivity, they're being raped every day. It's very painful for me that you ask me to reconcile this just reminds me of something that I actually observed with my own eyes. We had two people, mentally ill people in our town, Khanasur, and one of them was beating the other one, but the one who was being beaten to his face, he was he was in very terrible situation, but the guy who was actually beating him, he was crying, and he was saying that, "Come, please hold him so I can escape." So what is happening that the Yazidis are the victims. The Yazidis are being beaten up, they've been persecuted, they've been given two choices, but the international community is asking for reconciliation before even asking for justice. So to me that justice is very important. To me is, for the short term, about 30% of the Yazidi homeland must be freed right now. We still have Sinjar.
Can we
please
come back
let me
to
give
this?
me maybe 2 more minutes just to finish.
Okay, but the thing is, I think if we can lay out what the long-term solution would be for the Yazidi people after we get how each community is responding, would that make sense?
Okay, sure.
I'd like to come back to that because I think we could say what the Iraqi constitution allows for, what a homeland might look like for minorities, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think so far I've been really trying to keep it short.
Yeah,
right?
that would be great because
Okay.
we are
But
running out of time.
to be fair, I'd
Yeah.
really like to give a little bit more background about Assyrians. When I'm saying Assyrians, I am talking about all three denominations.
Yep.
We come from the Church of the East, Chaldean Catholic Church, and the Syriac Orthodox, and there's a few Protestant and so on. But when I say Assyrian, I mean all of that, right? And I don't separate it with Chaldean Syriac, because we are all Assyrian. Okay, that's number one. And the reason I'm saying that, because there is a misconception out there that the Christians are being given a choice of jizya.
Yes.
That is not true at all. And there was a recent article by Nina Shea that eloquently stated that there's been a 278-page report done by the Knights of Columbus and IDC together, where we gathered testimony and everything to show that. There's been legal papers done, a 35-page legal paper. All these were given to Secretary Kerry, and I think moments before he was about to announce the declaration of genocide, Christians were included in there. So that's one thing, and that's why the UN is hesitating to include us into the genocide, because they keep claiming that this misconception that they were given a jizya, and it was extortion. It wasn't jizya.
That is my experience reporting in the region, that this just to make sure everybody's up to speed here on this jizya tax, right? The idea being that ISIS sends out promotional videos saying, with happy faces of Christians saying, all I have to do is pay this small amount of money. When the lived experience is that is not at all true. It's extortion, or, as jizya tax, I'll take your 3-year-old daughter. So it's not a viable, ISIS is in fact not allowing Christians to pay some tax that lets them off the hook. Is that?
Right. And this tax comes, goes back to, the beginning of Islam, right? I mean, it was a security tax, and they're using that as an excuse, but they are really not offering it, or the offer is so ridiculous, like $8,000 a month. It's extortion.
Or your child, or your wife.
Or your child, right? Exactly. So that's the other misconception I wanted to say to the world. So since the June of 2014, the political map in Iraq has changed, and the vision, of the people has totally changed completely about their own future. I mean, if there isn't a future, it's hard psychologically to take the next step, right? What is the next thing to do? If all I'm doing is trying to, feed my family, and that's it, what is the next step as far as career and future for the kids and everything? So all that is lost once that comes to a stop, right? So when the future is unpredictable. So the security, the insecurity pushed the people to emigrate, number one. That's why, since 2003, the exodus has been massive and to the point of extinction, right, in the area. And we have been there over 6,000 years. And we were one of the first groups to adopt Christianity. But when you just say Christians, you are talking about only the past 2,000 years, right? And you've just knocked off the 4,000 years of existence there. Okay. So if they're ever to return back home, there needs to be this confidence that we have self-determination, security, and that we won't be abandoned again, and I say that over and over again in history. And the most recent was in June of 2014, when we were disarmed and abandoned.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's excellent, and we are going to return to that. I'm going to look at Nick for a high sign on how much time we have left. 25 minutes left. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to turn it over to questions in 5 to 7 minutes. That's going to be the aim. So let's hear from both the Turkmen and KAKAI community on this question. Then we're going to talk for 1 minute about what this. We've heard a little bit. There are a couple of regions left where the Yazidis are still strong. This idea of returning to the Nineveh Plain, what would it take internationally? So first we're going to hear both from both the Turkmen and the KAKAI about what effective response your community has been able to take so far, or what is working.
Yeah, thanks again. I think, although I am a human rights activist, but I still thinking as a doctor to put solution and to treat any disease, you must diagnose at first. I think what happened is related to something internal issues and something external. An internal issue, I think there is a cultural problem in Iraq. There is a misunderstanding of democracy, really. There is a terrorism in the brain, because I know that any movement in the hand need an impulse in the nerve cell in the brain, and it will be transmitted to the hand to be moved. So I think the terrorism in Iraq is present in the brain of some ethnic groups. And if we want to, as Mr. Yonadim told, that it was present before ISIS and it will regain and it will appear in another phase, Qaeda, ISIS, and so. So we must put an educational and cultural program to solve this problem. And this way all happened by NGOs and by the help of the international community. Another problem is present in the constitution of Iraq.
Yeah.
There is a real problems in the constitution of Iraq, and the fact of disputed area is one of it. The large lands, and most of such lands was the lands of minority, Turkmen and other minority, called as disputed area. Disputed area between who and who? Iraqi government and KRG, between us and government, I don't know.
Right.
And who was the responsible of such term? So this made the Iraqi government to be away from us, really. The KRG to extend more, to get more opportunity because they have external support, and they want to extend because they have a bad history and they don't have, and they don't trust to anyone. They want to extend, and the other ethnic group was the same. So we have a constitutional problem, and it must be changed.
Yep.
This is a problem. Another problem is the external. The problem in Iraq, that there is an external intervention in Iraq from all, whether from US, from Iran, from Turkey, from Saudi, everyone trying to support certain ethnic group and weakening of the others. This is the problem in Iraq. So we need a real democracy, a real implementing of rules of democracy and human rights, reducing such intervention. If there is intervention for helping Iraq, for helping Iraqi people, it's okay. But if it is against one another, it's a problem. I think to put a solution about what happened and the crisis on the ground, we need to divide it into short term and long term. Short term, we must deal with the crisis. We must deal with the abducted women urgently, not just to talk. We must deal with victims of chemical weapon. We must deal with women and children. According to UNICEF, now we have about 2 million children under danger in Iraq.
Yeah.
Those children, for the ongoing 10 years, how will they grow?
Yep.
They will be a real source of criminal acts in the future.
Exactly.
So this is a question. I think the best way is to empower the local NGOs, support them by training, support them by creating or establishing human rights institution in Iraq. I think, and this is a message from us to Georgetown University, thankfully, to study this issue and to help the Iraqi people to establish an institution specialized in human rights in Iraq or the Middle East, to spread the thoughts of human rights in Iraq, because it is absent in Iraq.
Okay, doctor, I'm gonna wrap you up right there. So okay, great. So, and because our KAKAI colleague talked a little bit about the problems with the Constitution, I think that's where we want to go now. We want to talk about, in just to wrap up and then to open it up for questions, if minorities in Iraq were to return post-ISIS, what might that look like? Is the idea of a safe haven possible? Certainly the United States is not going to support any boots on the ground effort or no-fly zone. That's unfortunately the reality. So let's take it as a given that we're not going to see an international force, fighting force on the ground. We are not going to see a no-fly zone. It's simply too expensive. If I sat there and I were an ambassador saying, sorry, we can't help you with those things, and you said, yes, we can still have a safe haven, what does the Iraqi constitution allow for? What might self-determination and self-protection look like? What might a solution for a safe haven look like? Yeah? And then we will turn it over to you guys for questions. Yep. Murad?
So I think, as principle, the system that produces a genocide, you should not ask for the same system to be established. That would be so stupid. If you try to bring everything to what was before, and basically you prepare the ground for another genocide, atrocities against everyone. So we need a different solution. That solution must be internally accepted, but the fact is that within Iraq and within the culture in the Middle East, if you are the other, you will never be embraced. If you are the other, you will always be put on the edge. You will never be listened to. The Yazidis had 8 seats in the parliament with the last election. Now we have 1 or 2. And a lot of times that the Yazidi politicians will be implants, not real voices of the community. We don't have any minister, any directorate. We don't have anyone in the government. We always treated as third-class citizens in our areas. We have to accept always the orders. We never allowed to have a voice, a real voice. If you want to have a voice, you have to have a certain voice, not your own voice. So I think the new system must allow all the minorities to have a real voice. And the conversation that the US was having this sort of National Guards forces, something like the US system where you have like a federal system where every area is in principle in charge of their own fate. I think that's a good system. If we can apply it where instead of someone coming from Baghdad or from Erbil or from somewhere else to protect me, if I was the one who protecting my children, then I would have had just more emotional backing. I would have, so that's sort of security-wise, but also administratively. If you have people running their own staff, then you are respecting them. Then they know that they are someone in that. I think for Yazidis, we are nobody in the region. We are nobody. We are basically begging for food. We are begging for a place in the government. We are begging for as simplest as being mayor of our own city in Sheikhan. My sister Bayan is here. The mayor of Sheikhan used to be a Yazidi historically, and now this last thing is not longer a Yazidi. With the Yazidi parliament members, there was, I don't know what happened, but the decision was that no Yazidis would go to the parliament, just maybe one person to have a certain view. So that is a real problem. In Ninawa, for example, the Council of Ninawa, where we had 6 members, in principle, the deputy of the governor should be a Yazidi, but he will never be a Yazidi, because if you are a Yazidi, you are a third-class citizen, you are not respected. So to bring that respect back, I think there must be some international parameters. Some international parameters working with both KRG and the Iraqi government. You cannot have a heaven in the middle of the hill. Like, you cannot have just something beautiful in a war zone where you have these areas are collapsing. So you need to work with all this, everyone should work together to create that system, but there must be some international oversight. If we do not have international oversight, we will never have a voice, because that system produced a genocide, and the international community have the responsibility to prevent that from happening again.
Okay, so Mona, I'm going to put you on the spot here with what international oversight might look like viably. What could the international community do as part of the solution?
Okay. So I just want to say that in the words, and I'm probably not saying it, correctly or right exactly, but Mr. Carl Anderson of Knights of Columbus said, citizen second-class citizenship is a precursor to genocide, and that is so true. So when you're talking about third-class citizenship, forget that. Not even second-class citizenship. We don't deserve that, okay? So the overall recommendations that we're talking about is just that we deserve to be treated as equals to everybody else, okay? That's number one. So the international community, we need to support to the indigenous minorities, right, directly through their legitimate NGOs, right, that have been established. That's number one, to deliver the aid and humanitarian activities, during this crisis. Because if it's done through the governing powers, most of the time it's not trickling down to them because we're not in the UNHCR camps or government-run places. Okay, so that's one thing. Empowering the indigenous minorities to establish safe, internationally protected zones. Okay, I mean, that keeps coming up over and over again on this panel. For long-term, in parallel, adopt and establish the Nineveh Plain province with the federal government and neutralize the region between Baghdad and Erbil for now. Later, there could be a referendum where they could vote and they could be organized to let the people decide for themselves if they want to stay with Baghdad, Erbil, or establish a new region. Okay, but for now, this is short term. Support local security forces like the MPU, who are the only independent groups that are at the will of the people.
Yep.
Okay, and encourage them to participate in the liberation of their lands. Also to provide local security in the future for their own region. Okay, and that's really the only way to get the people back home is when they know that they are being protected by their own
right, and those people
minorities.
have a way, that militia has a way to be integrated into a larger Iraqi governmental system.
Right, and so maintaining this rich cultural diversity in the region is really essential to for peace to prevail in that region at all.
That sounds great. Okay, guys.
I don't.
Isolated regions? You talked about isolated regions?
Independent areas, like semi-autonomous areas in these regions?
What?
Are you asking for semi-autonomous regions in these areas?
For now, they just need to be able to self-govern.
Okay,
Later on, once things settle down, just
Yep.
like Murad was saying, that we're in the middle of a crisis. We need to breathe first, right? We need to take a breath. And right now, it needs to be neutralized, and we need to be able to take care of ourselves right now in our own homes and in our own lands. Later on, when things settle down, people feel secure there, then there could be a democratic vote as to which way to look, south to Baghdad or to Erbil, or to create an independent province.
كم من الوقت لدي أنا؟ قلت
much
دقيقة
time do I have? You said
وتبرعت
1
جولة
minute.
من الحديث للجماعة عوضا عني. هل تعوضوني؟
They spoke more than me, so would you give me
Okay,
compensation?
you will have the right to answer the first question from the audience, but 1 minute now.
You will also get the right.
إذا 1 minute ما أحسن. إذا 1 minute مني إلك الوقت.
يسمحوا لك ترد على أول سؤال من الجمهور كمان عشان نجيب.
لا الجمهور ما عنده السؤال، أنا عندي توضيحات. يعني إذا
I
كان
now
السؤال
bargain.
الجمهور أصلا ما
I have
يعرف شلون
explanations.
يسألني.
Solution.
الحلول. أنا ما أتحدث عن الاضطهادات أصلا حتى أعطيكم حلول. جزء من الحلول عند الكاكية موجود، الزميل اليزيدي تحدث عنها. الحلول مضمونة مرتبطة بحقوق اليزيديين
that I
أيضا.
can come up with.
إذا
My colleague here, the Yazidis, have mentioned most of them.
Okay, great.
These are the.
أوكي. أولا بالنسبة للكاكية، أولا الضمان الدستوري ذكرهم كديانة مستقلة. إحنا ليس مطالبنا عن الكوتا أو النقاط الأخرى. أولا الحماية الثقافة المختصة بنا دستوريا في العراق وكردستان.
We want the Kakai religion to be mentioned in the constitution. It's not a matter of having a quota in the parliament or a quota of power, but a matter of recognizing that we are a community with its own independent culture.
Okay, and with that, thank you so much. We have 10 minutes left to
لا
ask
ليس لدي
questions.
كلام الكثير،
I'm
لكن أنت
so
أخذتي
sorry.
سرقتي وقتي.
You stole my time.
وهل
I am
تعوضيني الوقت؟
already, I'm
No.
practicing
الجمهور
the
يسأل
Iraqi
وأنا ألتزم على الجواب بالسؤال.
Okay, thank you. Shukran jazilan. Okay, so with that, we've got 10 minutes for questions. So why don't we take 3 questions at a time, okay? So who's got the mic? Yeah, awesome. So why don't you, here are 3 questions right here. So why don't you give the mic to these guys? Each will pose your question and we'll take them in groups to make sure we get to as many as possible. Okay? Does that make sense?
أنت البارحة كان عندي ملاحظات.
شكرا جزيلا. أنا النائب حجي قندور ممثل الكوتا الإيزيدية في البرلمان العراقي. سؤالي: كيف ترون مرحلة ما بعد تحرير المناطق الأقليات وخاصة الإيزيدية ونحن نعيش في منطقة سنية وتحيط بنا السنة من 4 جهات؟
Mr. Haji Gundur, I will translate that.
Thank you.
Mr. Haji Gundur, he is the representative of the Yazidi quota. The question is what the post-ISIS will look like, where the Yazidis basically from the 4 sides are surrounded with the Sunnis. What will be how the post-ISIS will look like?
Excellent. That's an excellent question. If you could pass the microphone.
I guess the elephant in the room, I'm Penny Starr with CNS News,
Yeah.
is how should ISIS or how can ISIS be defeated? Because that's at the heart of why all these things are happening. So I
Right.
wanted to hear their opinion on that.
Excellent. And the other elephant is how can communities live together when their neighbors have turned against them, like a post-Rwanda situation? Okay, yeah.
My name is Alan Mansour. I represent the Sons of Nahrain, which we've been in politics in Iraq since '91 and even before then.
Is there a question here, sir?
Yes, there is a question. I am very happy that my brothers Yazidis and the Turkmens and the Kakais all thinking of a safe haven or something that is within the Iraqi constitution to self-administrate. And I am really very sad to hear my parliamentarian from Iraq to say, I don't understand how is this going to happen. This is a proposal that's been handed to the Vice President of the United States of America a year ago, signed by 9 of the Chaldean Assyrian Syriac organization of that plan. I would like to give it to you.
Okay,
and
great.
also the question would be, for all the panels, we need to, how can we work together as the communities in that region to actually accomplish this?
Okay, so I'm going to turn to our KAKAI colleague to ask that how can we work together question. So he has a chance to answer that, yeah? Defeating ISIS might be might be beyond the scope of these guys, right? You know what I mean? That's great. What kind of international response would you like? And okay, that sounds good. Okay, yes.
Yes.
Nick, can you give me, when we've got 3 minutes, can you give me a high sign?
Is the gentleman going to
Yes.
answer the question on ISIS?
No, he can.
On how to work together?
He can answer whatever he'd like, but it sounds like this idea of how can we work together is something he's already thinking about.
أولا إيجاد النقاط المشتركة بين المشاكل التي تخص الأقليات وجمعها في إطار واحد والعمل عليه.
We must find the common ground among all the problems of the minorities and start addressing these issues.
ثانيا تأمين المناطق من الناحية العسكرية.
Secondly,
والأمنية.
we need to
التي يعيش فيها الأقليات.
We need to secure all the areas where the minorities are living from the military and security point of views.
ثالثا المصالحة الوطنية العمل على المصالحة الوطنية بالشكل المطلوب بما يناسب القضايا العالقة به.
And thirdly, to effect national reconciliation in the desired way and in a manner that suits the kind of problems that have arisen.
والاتجاه بمنظمات المجتمع المدني حول نشر ثقافة سيادة القانون وعدم التوجه إلى الانتقامات من قبل الأقليات.
And also getting the civil community engaging in spreading a culture to prevent vengeance and to diffuse tensions between minorities.
وكذلك الحماية القانونية والدولية.
And providing legal and international protection.
وكذلك يوجد لدينا الآن قوات بيشمركة للأقليات تابعة لوزارة البيشمركة. نطلب من الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية بالإشراف على تلك القوات الخاصة بالأقليات.
The Peshmergas, which are the Kurdish
بتدريبها وتجهيزها وتسليحها قبل المشاركة بهم في جبهات القتال كونهم ليسوا مدربين بالشكل الكافي وليسوا مسلحين بالشكل الكافي.
The Peshmergas do not have the right training and the right kind of
I think this is a very important point.
And they would need help.
كون هذه القوات أصلاً شكلت لحماية مناطقهم.
the Peshmergas were formed in the first place in order to protect Kurdish areas.
Okay. So with that, we're just gonna say that that's a very important point that Mona touched on earlier. That the Kurdish forces withdrew from some of these areas in the advance of ISIS, so the protection wasn't there. And in other areas, we've got 3 minutes. In other areas, the Kurds have used their own advance to take land from minority groups in order to safeguard their own interests rather than those they're protecting. We have 3 minutes left. We're going to take the next 3 questions, and we're going to give you guys a chance to respond. Yeah, so.
Sorry about
that.
Can I go?
Nick? We have 3 minutes left.
Things we never agree with is spoken today, and answer is not given for people. They are asking political questions, and they are not politicians.
Okay, so then would you like to ask a question?
We have a lot of comments, and we spoke nothing.
Yeah, welcome to a panel in Washington. We're doing our best, to articulate who these guys are, that's the reality, right? To figure out who is being persecuted and why and what can be done is a pretty tall order. Yeah.
We can't tell you because we are in the middle of a battle in Baghdad.
Exactly.
But no, they are NGOs.
All right, thank you, sir. Last question right here.
My name is Bayan. I'm from the Kurdistan Regional Government. Like my colleague, we're very frustrated because some accusations have been made and they're inaccurate, but we can deal with that another time. My question is, I agree with a lot of what's been said, despite some of the inaccuracies. There needs to be a protection force. There needs to be an international guarantee. When all of you speak to the international community, not us, to the international community, what do they say?
About what? About what kind of protection force they'd like?
About self-governance. What is their response, not what is ours?
Okay, so why don't we end with this question? If each of you are to articulate for your particular group, what kind of self-protection force you'd...
When they talk to the Americans, to the
Yeah.
British, to the Germans,
Yeah.
what is the response of the Americans?
What do they say back to you? Okay, so what do you hear from the international community when you say we need our own protection force?
So if I might just answer the questions to go back with the Sunnis being around, I think that's what I said, the justice first. Once you have the justice, then the justice could be established by reconciliation. For your question, the international community does not stand up for its obligation to this moment. The international community's answer to this question is no. Ban. So the international community doesn't have a special plan for minorities. The international community is telling the minorities to go and find your own solution. And as I said, if you lost everything over 3 generations, if you are a people under persecution and a genocide, what solution you will find? And I hope this conference will answer your question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think Murad answered that. But there was other questions as well.
Yes, sure.
So I just want to say that we need, as an international community, need to be ready for post-ISIS, not plan when the Mosul has been liberated. So, like what happened with Fallujah, the same thing's going to happen in Mosul. There's going to be a mass exodus of people. What are we doing with those people? Do we have a plan for that? Number one. The other one is we need to support and adopt new systems of education, right, that promote tolerance toward culture and diversity and accepting others for different religions. So it's just a whole, the system of education has to be looked at again and redone. And accepting of different ethnic backgrounds as well, and having respect for each other, okay? And create jobs. There needs to be investment by the international community to create jobs and bring back dignity and promote sustainability in the region. That's really the only way to keep the diversity and peace in that area.
Okay, great. So by my clock, we have 3 minutes left. Yeah? So let's give both the Turkmen and the KAKAI representative a chance to respond to these questions. Yeah?
Yeah, I think regarding the safe haven international community, I know that it's not easy.
No.
But the problem, as I mentioned, that we were over 13 years, at least if we are talking about after change, we are like an experimental field, testing field, really. So we must at least shout and tell the reality and the facts to the others and ask what happened. And we know that at 1991, a right given to the Kurdish people, and they got their rights by this safe haven or autonomy, and they formed their own region, and they are living peacefully in their lands. So I think we have such right according to the Iraqi constitution and according to the responsibility of the international community as they change the system at 2003.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, and 1 minute, yeah?
ما يخالف شنو السؤال بالضبط.
So what is the question that he's answering?
So I think from the KRG representative, I think it's essential to say that the Kurds have taken in hundreds of thousands of people, open borders, when their own economy was not open to it. And so as much as there are ongoing problems, it's really important to express gratitude for that action, and that the Kurds themselves have not gotten the support from the United States government to take on this continuing problem. So I think that's really important to say, and we're going to return to the KAKAI representative. So when you go to the Americans and say, we need a self-defense force, what do they say to you? لا.
بالنسبة للقوة أستاذ ينادم.
I'm sorry, time is really up.
هو أنت قاطعتني ولا هي سألتني يعني ما افتهمت. على كل حال بالنسبة للقوات حماية الكاكائية التابعة لوزارة البيشمركة، مو بس الكاكائي عندهم قوات حماية تابعة لوزارة كل الأقليات عندهم، ما أدري التركمان يمكن ما عندهم، والتركمان أيضا عندهم حشد شعبي تركماني. نعم هذا لا ينكر. لكن إذا احنا طلبنا من الأمريكان الإشراف على قوة الحماية الكاكائية، كذلك نطلب الإشراف على جميع قوات الأقليات الموجودة لكي تتمكن هذه القوات بالتعاون أو بالتنسيق معا مع قوات لتجهيزها وتدريبها.
Okay, that's really the time that we have. So could you translate that?
We've asked the Americans to offer help not only to the Peshmergas but to all the other groups.
Okay, so with that, this has been so engaging, and I have to say that is unusual. So let us continue these conversations over lunch. Thank you so much.
If I could ask the panel to hang on just a second. Ladies and gentlemen, this is religious freedom in action. To the gentleman who complains that we need to leave this, sir, I'm speaking to you, that these are political questions. In a democracy, politics is not left just to the politicians. In a democracy, politics is the way we organize our lives together. And religious actors such as these have every right to say what they think their future should be. This is precisely what religious freedom is, and for my money, this is what we need in Iraq and Syria. So let us applause for this panel. Thank you very much.